everyone, ChasingCinema.com here at AMC Town Square for the premiere screening of Demolition, the new film starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Naomi Watts. As you can see, I'm not here with James Shue. I'm actually in Mr. Shue's seat, which is kind of nice, moving up in the world. I've always been on the left, and I'm just like, you know what, I got to inch up, and I'm actually be able to sit here, put my hand on the camera, move up a little bit. But I'm here with my good friend and special guest, Josh Bell of the Las Vegas Weekly. You can find all of his work at LasVegasWeekly.com and JoshBellHatesEverything.com. Yep, anytime you've picked up that weekly and read a review, most likely it was written by my good friend Josh Bell here. And we're going to be talking about the new film from director Jean-Marc who brought who brought us Wild and Dallas Buyers Club. So both Oscar nominated films and winning films. So I'm interested to see this film. A big fan of Jake Gyllenhaal. Let's kind of start there. Are you a fan of Gyllenhaal? Like, I was a big fan of Nightcrawler. That was probably my favorite film.
Nightcrawler was, amazing. Yeah. I think Jake Gyllenhaal, especially recently, has done some really strong work. I didn't always like him in the past, but he's probably in the last, 2 years or whatever since Nightcrawler and a couple other things.
Prisoners, I think he was really good in.
Right. Southpaw, which is, I mean, it's not a great movie.
I didn't see the film. I didn't see the film he did with, was it Enemy?
With the director of Prisoners. Strange film. But yeah, I think he's really stepped things up recently. So I would say I'm a fan of his now. Maybe I was neutral on him before, but now I'm a fan.
And then we have Wild and Dallas Buyers Club, the films that came from this director. I don't remember if you're a fan of Dallas Buyers Club.
Yeah, I like Dallas Buyers Club. I think we talked about this at one point. There's such a huge backlash against that movie, and I don't know. I thought it was maybe a little overdone. It's maybe not an amazing film, but I thought it was a really strong movie, and it had really good performances. So yeah, I did like it, and I loved Wild.
Yeah, I loved Wild
too. It's a fantastic movie. That was one of my top 10 movies of the year that year, and I just think that movie is phenomenal.
Yeah, and it seems like we're going to be kind of following the Wild path of kind of finding yourself and that type of theme here, as we see from the trailers of this movie. We have Chris Cooper also joining, and I already said Naomi Watts. So I'm looking forward to this picture. Jake Gyllenhaal and the fact that it was directed by the guy who did Wild and Dallas Buyers Club. Both films I really enjoyed. I think I'd prefer Wild to Dallas Buyers Club like you, but I'm excited to see this film, and I'm surprised kind of how quiet it is. It is a movie that I have seen trailers for, but it's still quiet, and I don't think it'll be able to compete very much with The Boss this weekend.
No, and it's getting a smaller. It's a sort of a weird mid-level release. It's not just a kind of New York and LA thing, but it's not nearly as many theaters as the other big releases this week. So I don't know what kind of approach they're taking with this, marketing-wise, but it's definitely not going to be as big.
And
as
it's
The Boss.
A bit early, for it to necessarily be an Oscar
right.
Which doesn't necessarily mean that it won't be. But,
you never know, but I think it premiered, I believe, last year at the Toronto Film Festival.
Oh, okay.
And that's often a place where movies kind of springboard to become Oscar contenders, but it didn't get great reviews from there. And so I think instead of pushing it out at the end of last year to be considered for awards and be in that kind of crowded space, they figured maybe it's not going to win any awards, so we'll hold off a little bit and put it out when it's not competing with all these big prestige movies.
So it's in a smaller way. All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's go see how Demolition is. About an hour and 45 minutes. Let's go. Hello everyone, we just got out of Demolition. Mr. Josh Bell, usually Mr. Shue would go first, but you are a special guest, so tell me how you thought about Demolition.
I didn't really care for it a whole lot. We were talking before about expectations, and I think there's a lot of talented people involved in this movie. Jean-Marc, the director, who made some really strong films. There's some good actors in this movie, Jake Gyllenhaal and Naomi Watts, and I think they bring some of those talents to this movie. I think this is a very well acted movie. In fact, Naomi Watts does such a good job. I wanted to see more of her. And directing wise, there's some strong elements to it as well. I think the way that they kind of fragment the flashbacks of this character, similar to what the director did in Wild, gives it sort of this impressionistic feel. The biggest problem, I think, to me with this movie is the script, is the writing is just so heavy-handed, and it's so oppressively serious and meaningful in a very, to me, phony-seeming kind of way. And there's only so much you can do with that material to make it, to kind of downplay it, and especially in the last I don't know, in the final act or the last 15, 20 minutes when we get all these big revelatory moments that to me were just a bunch of total BS, I couldn't buy it. But the performances were good. I will say that. I'll give the actors credit. It just to me came off as really disingenuous.
I think I liked it more than you did.
Yeah.
I think maybe I was a little bit easy, but I think Jake Gyllenhaal was really wonderful. And Watts, Chris Cooper was also really, really good in this movie. I think him and Gyllenhaal shared some really, really great scenes. I do think that this movie was a total different look from Wild, right? Like I think it's easily to compare those two films, and this movie feels a little bit more empty than Wild, and it feels like it would definitely kind of it would make more sense if he made this movie first, because like it was his first attempt, and then he was able to kind of perfect it, because it looks weird from him going to this well perfected story about this woman kind of having this self revelation, and then going to this where you're like, oh, it's kind of a half revelation,
right?
But I think the movie does have an interesting tone. It is a bit darker. I do think that I laughed, a decent amount. I think there was some really good kind of humor. There's some really nice chemistry between Jake Gyllenhaal and the character that he acts, including the young boy, Naomi Watts, and like I said earlier, Chris Cooper. But I think that the movie kind of falls to a point in maybe more of the second act with Naomi Watts, where you really wanted to see her, where I felt that kind of came to a little bit of a standstill, where I was kind of like, all right, well, where are we going next? And I think that when you're watching this film, you might feel that this movie is going in a certain direction, when it's not so much about Gyllenhaal and his interaction with one person, but Gyllenhaal's interaction with many people. I think that some people will assume that him, and as you said you want to see more Naomi Watts, that they're going to see a lot more of her, where it's just more about him interacting with Cooper, Watts, than this young boy, and it's about his kind of learning from each of them. And I think that the movie doing that makes you kind of feel unsatisfied in these stories where he opens them and starts. He begins this relationship with Naomi Watts, and it kind of doesn't bring us anywhere particular. He starts this relationship with this young boy that feels all too easy to kind of get to the point, and then it kind of ends a little bit too melodramatically. But even that kind of just ends in a very, nonsensical way.
Right.
I also feel that, man, where was I going with that? I know I had an idea, but I must have lost it. But overall, I think that the movie feels like it's enjoyable. I think once you get to the very end of the movie, I think I was happy with where I got. I do feel that there were some points in the movie that was a bit of a struggle and just kind of lost that drive and that kind of that push where you started from. Because I think the beginning of the movie is really good, but it does change tone a few times, and then there's a few points where you're just kind of like, all right, I'm losing it. It's losing steam, if you will. But overall, I thought that it was a good movie, and one that I recommend, especially if you're a fan of Jake Gyllenhaal or a fan of the director. And I also felt that, what did I want to say, man? That's killing me. Okay, well, I can't think of it right now. Do you have anything else to add?
No, I mean, I disagree with you about I felt less satisfied at the end than I did sort of in the middle, because the end tries to pummel you with all of those big, melodramatic, meaningful moments. And I thought this movie was best when it was a little subtler, when it was a little quieter, which is not that often. But if it's just the interactions between the characters, if it's just Jake Gyllenhaal and Naomi Watts, or even Jake Gyllenhaal and the teenage boy character kind of having a conversation where it's not about like, oh, look at this metaphor about how he's, destroying, like literally destroying things because of he's deconstructing his life or whatever, this really overly constructed narrative device. So to me, the smaller bits were the better parts, and then when you get to the end and it's just like big moment after big moment, and like, oh my god, the secret that came out, and oh my god, this person is in the hospital, and this, and it felt phonier and phonier to me. So I left feeling quite unsatisfied, as opposed to maybe in the middle where I thought, well, maybe this is kind of interesting, maybe I can go with it even though some of it isn't working for me.
I would say that probably the first act was my favorite part about this movie, though, where you would say probably more the second. So we're both kind of lukewarm on the third. The only thing I would say I really enjoyed about the ending of the film, I'm a sap, and I know that, right? So Josh isn't much of a sap as I am. So I think I just got a little bit more emotional than he did towards the end of the film. But I will say that I did like, the movie doesn't go with your typical ending. Like, spoiler alert, I'm just going to say it. It's a spoiler. If you haven't seen the movie, just fast forward 2 seconds. It's just like you expect them like almost to like, I think general audience expect this whole family to kind of come together,
Right.
and it doesn't go in that kind of fashion.
Right,
It's not
right.
this love story that you're expecting.
Right, but
And
I mean,
like
that kind of does a disservice, I think, again, to Naomi Watts, is we build up, even if there's not going to have the love story that one expects, just her character is goes nowhere at the end, and just kind of is pushed to the side for the sake of these big melodramatic moments that don't really mean a whole lot. And so I don't know, I felt like it kind of didn't really serve that character very well, and she's just another prop. She's really not much better than the bathroom stall that he takes apart. She's just one other tool for him to use to get to this point where he feels like his life has meaning again, and who cares really what she's doing.
And that's why he's one of the greats. Josh Bell, you read his review of Demolition and the Boss at LasVegasWeekly.com, or you can read a bunch of other fun stuff that he does, like Christmas in July, segments like that, at JoshBellHatesEverything.com, or just pick up your copy of the weekly here at AMC Town Square or many other places. We also reviewed The Boss, and me, Mr. James Hsu, and Josh Bell collaborated to review Hardcore Henry. Click that white eye right above my head. A bunch of links will drop down. You found my review of Demolition and the Boss as well, plus that review, so make sure to tune in to that. Josh, thank you so much for coming out tonight.
It was
Really
a pleasure.
appreciate it. ChasingCinema.com is known as the film lover's website.